We're back. Oh, goodness. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, yeah. What, like almost 17 months since we sat in person together to record one of these.
Do you think folks knew, our regular viewers, that we were remote this whole time, or did we fool them?
Oh, I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't know.
Well, it is good to see you in person.
Yeah.
And
welcome back.
It's good timing because we actually have a lot to get across to folks. If you're interested in climate, if you've been watching this issue for a month or for a decade, and you've been kind of worried about whether or not our state infrastructure government and leaders could answer the call, we have some interesting news, right?
We are poised. I feel like we're at that moment where we're out at the end of the diving board and we are ready to get started.
Have we been practicing?
I feel like we've been practicing, but then again, we're not the ones who are doing the heavy lifting right now. We did the political work to set this in motion, which we'll talk to you about. But we've got some really excellent, committed, diverse set of Vermonters who are working on the details of this. And that's why we're here today, because we want to talk about how we got here and, say a few thanks to the folks who helped us along the way. And then talk about a pretty big call to action.
Yeah. And so let's get started.
Absolutely.
Let's just maybe review kind of a lay of the land. Well, who are you?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sarah Copeland-Hansis.
Oh, Sarah.
I'm co-chair of the Legislative Climate Solutions Caucus. And here is my partner in crime.
Chris Pearson, Senator from Chittenden County, and also co-chair. And 2012, I think, was when I was in the House at the time, and then Representative Margaret Cheney, who's now on the Public Utility Commission, she and I got our heads together and we're like, boy, climate is really a big deal. And when I sat in that big red room in Montpelier and look around and think, well, most people here agree, this is not actually like a lot of climate deniers in Vermont in the legislature, but we want to elevate the issue because it's so perplexing and multi, what would you say? It touches everything, right?
Right. There isn't one committee in the House, like there is a committee who focuses on education or a committee that focuses on transportation. There's no climate change committee. Right. And so the complexity of it.
We started what we call the Climate Solutions Caucus. And, it's had bumps and fits and starts along the way and as it's coming up on 10 years. But now we're
85 members,
85
I think.
Members.
Yeah.
Out of 180 in the whole legislature. That's pretty good. Senators, House members, Democrats, progressives, independents, maybe a Republican or two. At times, they've come
to the meetings sometimes, and I'm not sure they are signed up on the roster, but that's okay. We
welcome all.
Yeah, we want them to come and be heard.
And we've just been trying to elevate this huge challenge, this emergency that everybody kind of agrees with, and nobody can just say, well, pass that bill and we've taken care of it, right? This is a worldwide problem. And people often say, well, where can we look? What country's done it? What state has really nailed this? There's no one.
Yeah. There isn't a blueprint that we can follow. And so we have to work on writing the blueprint. So
there are snippets of blueprints everywhere that we can pull from.
Yeah.
So the caucus, the Climate Solutions Caucus of legislators, works on elevating policy, helping inform ourselves and our colleagues. And we've had some success. A few years ago, I think it was maybe early on when you became co-chair, right?
Yeah, 2018, 2019.
Talk
Yeah.
about our
Yeah.
summer of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the pivotal points in the history of the Climate Solutions Caucus really was, after a number of years of feeling like we were making slow progress, but sort of hitting a ceiling that wouldn't allow us to really make bold change that will change the trajectory of our emissions. Chris and I took over as co-chairs. This is fast forwarding to the point where he's a senator and I'm a representative. And so each of us in our chambers have rallied, our members of the Climate Solutions Caucus. And we decided that what we really needed to do was double down not only on organizing internally in the legislature in order to plan better bills, but also to organize externally and really engage with Vermonters, because you all are the ones who can make or break the ideas that we put forward. We can put forward, the best ideas that we glean from all over the country or all over the world. But unless we have Vermonters like you,
Right.
Calling your representative and saying, yeah, this is a good idea, let's do this, let's do this yesterday, because honestly, we're too late. We knew we wouldn't get the progress we needed. And so we organized a summer of work groups. I remember being on a number of calls. Back then, we didn't do Zoom so much.
Right.
But I did. I got teleconferencing. I got a conference call line, and I was on the transportation subcommittee. What were you working on then?
I was working on the
green economy.
Yeah. Sort of it's not just trying to pull through. Hey, we don't have to pick jobs or the climate.
Let's find the things that
we should have them intersect very clearly.
Yeah.
And what strikes me is, and then we sort of launched into this public phase where legislators, we went, Sarah or I and our partners went all over the state. We had, 20 public meetings, and the same premise as the foundation of the caucus. The public, we believe, polling shows, walking down the street shows that the public in Vermont is very concerned and wants to see action. But getting that elevated so that people are actually talking about it, and the climate environmental movement tends to be very, not scattered in a negative sense, but you could be talking about water quality. You could be talking about international issues or pipelines in the Dakotas, right? And so how do you trying to focus Montpelier and get some of that grassroots energy? That's what I remember us trying to do. Out of that, we came up with, I think, 4 main priorities in that year: transportation climate initiative, contractor registry, and the Global Warming Solutions Act, and 100% renewable, and a renewable energy standard. We've bumped along through some of them, but most importantly, and what we want to help people understand is the Global Warming Solutions Act. What it's meant at the time, we called it foundational piece to all of this, and I've come to really, it is the law, and I've come to really understand how true that is. Right. I hope, or it's proving to be. Yeah. So the Global Warming Solutions Act, the reason that rose to the level of being a priority was because it takes our greenhouse gas emissions reductions aspirations, which we've had in statute under Republican governors and Democratic governors, renewed these aspirations for years. But fact of the matter is, we have blown through every aspiration that we've set for ourselves in terms of reduction targets. And so the foundation of global warming is really putting those aspirations into law as requirements, and then setting up a group of people who will come together to help write a plan for how to reduce our emissions. Yeah, and so think of the Paris Agreement, right, that was internationally celebrated and signed on to by all but one country. For a while, 2 countries, but we're back in that as the United States. And it set emission reductions by 2025. You got to do X by 2030, by 2050. So that's what we did. We replicated that in Vermont, and when Trump pulled us out of the Paris Agreement, Governor Scott led other governors, was part of a group saying, no, this is really important as a worldwide commitment. Yeah. Vermont is going to honor the Paris Agreement. So we were like, great, we'll just make sure that's in Vermont law.
Despite what's going on in Washington, I'm committed to doing our part. In response to the federal government's withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, I've joined 13 other governors to affirm the state's commitment to meeting our share of the emissions reductions for the United States Climate Alliance. In one respect, it was an easy decision, because in Vermont, we are already committed to going further, and I believe we can and will reach our goals of 90% renewables and greenhouse gas emissions reductions of 80 to 95% by 2050.
Yeah.
And then it pulled a bunch of experts together to help us really in the legislature and elsewhere. How do we do this? What do we have to do? We've got a lot of little pieces of this we've been doing for years, whether it's weatherization or electric vehicle incentives in some ways, transportation alternatives. But what is it really going to take to hit these targets? And then there was the accountability piece. Talk about that.
Yeah. And accountability, I think, is really key because of the track record that we have of blowing through all our aspirational targets. What the Global Warming Solutions Act says is, Vermont, you are required to make these reductions, and if you don't, there is a right of action, a legal proceeding that will allow someone in Vermont to go to the courts and say they ignored the plan, or
they didn't write a plan,
or they didn't write a plan, or the plan that they wrote didn't meet the needs of the reductions. And it was important to us to also recognize that while we need that accountability, we also don't want to waste a bunch of time in court. So the remedy, if we don't write a plan, or if the plan doesn't have the reduction components in it, is to go back and write another plan. Just get back to work. This isn't about long protracted court cases. This isn't about somebody getting a big payout. The injury is to all of us if we don't get this done. And so go back and write another plan.
That, in a way, that piece at the time when we enacted the bill was the most controversial and kind of weird, because it really says citizens can hold their government accountable if they're falling down, and there is no big payoffs. If you win the lawsuit, maybe you get your legal expenses covered, and then the courts say, the plan isn't aggressive enough, go back to the drawing table. This is really important. Just as a premise, I think citizens have this power in a democracy, but what I'm seeing as the work is underway is all of the participants in the parties are keenly aware of these the deadlines.
Right.
A lot of time in state government, we set deadlines. We need this analysis by January 15th, so that, because the legislature only meets till May 15th. And that just gets blown off, or this board needs to be appointed and up and running by February 1st. It's not even up by April 1st, right? We've seen this over and over, and there's no remedy. It's like, well, you ignored the law. We'll get to it. Mm-hmm. So you're not seeing that with global warming solutions. And finally, right, the crisis demands action, this aggressive action maybe a decade ago, but here we are. So that's kind of the overview. And there's such an intense need for citizens to be engaged in the next step. And so we want to work with everybody.
Yeah. Now that Global Warming Solutions Act is law and we have these reduction requirements, the next step of the process is that parts of the plan that are being written are going to be coming out for folks to comment on. And we certainly hope that the same sentiment that we heard during our roadshow events before we passed Global Warming Solutions, which was people saying time and time again, are you sure you're being bold enough? Do this is a crisis. We need to be doing more.
So I'm not super interested in building a movement to pass piecemeal laws that actually aren't addressing the situation at hand. They're the best that we can do in the context of the existing system, in the context of the legislature, but it's meaningless in the face of what we're actually facing. We need to have a reckoning with what is actually going on, okay? Our systems, the systems on which we rely for our lives and the future generations' lives are collapsing. And so I get it. I totally understand that you're allies and that you're fighting like hell and you've done 15 tours and you're going around the state and gathering people like this is super meaningful. But we have to have our eye on what we actually have to get done.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
And so, we're certainly hoping that you're all still there with us, because this is where our collective actions up until this point really have the opportunity to launch.
Thanks as always to Bob the Green Guy for pulling these videos together. And,
Super Bob. We'll
be back to dive in real soon. Right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
It's been real fun. Witty repartee.
Oh, you're right.